Certainly glad you could join us today. That's just fantastic. We have instructors that travel all over the country, spreading the joy of painting. We don't make mistakes. We just have happy accidents.
Hi, welcome back. I'm so glad you could join me today. My name's Nic Hankins, and I want to welcome you to the painting studio. We're going to use the Bob Ross wet-on-wet painting technique to paint a big, fantastic mountain. So stick around. Let me tell you what I've done with the canvas first. I have an 18 by 24 inch pre-stretched double primed canvas, and I've already covered this canvas with a thin, even coating of the liquid white. Now, it's best to check to be sure you have the proper coverage of liquid white. If you just touch it gently with your fingertips, you should be able to see the grooves in your fingerprint very clearly. If you have paint down in the grooves, that's an indication that you have too much liquid white and you'll need to remove a little. But this one looks to be in good shape. So let's get started. We'll take the old 2-inch brush, come down to the palette here, and we'll pick up a little bit of phthalo blue. Just going to pull that down, tap the brush into the color. Don't need too much, at least not to begin. We'll just take off and have a little fun today. Let's come up here and use some little crisscross strokes. We'll paint a bright little sky. Probably drop some clouds in this sky. Nice bright blue sky needs some pretty billowing clouds in there, so we'll add a few. Let's come over to the other corner. I like to make the corners just a touch darker and then work my way in towards the center and then down. And I'm not particularly concerned that I cover the canvas evenly with the blue. I actually want to have some dark spots, some light spots. Let the color and the value bounce around a little bit. Some spots even have no paint at all, and that's all right. We want a nice variety in there. All right, let's pick up a little more of that phthalo blue. And I'm going to go right next door and touch a little phthalo green. I'll add some phthalo green to my color. So I've got blue and green for a little lake. I think we'll have a little lake down here. So we'll work from the outside edge and sweep in. Just using basically very level strokes here, working from the outside edge in. And as I sweep in, my brush is lifting up and off the canvas. Same from this side. Sweep it in. If everything works out just the way we want it to, that little open area in the center will look like kind of like a little sheen of light playing across the water. We haven't done a thing other than not touch it. So we'll let the canvas and the paint, the equipment, that'll all work for us. All right, maybe while that brush is dirty, let's pick up a little Prussian blue. It's a darker, richer, stronger blue. And I'm going to come up and just darken those corners a little more. Maybe up along the top. We'll try to make a very atmospheric looking sky. A little more of the Prussian blue. Come over and hit this corner. There we go. All right, let's wash that brush out. We'll do a little blending. Of course, I just wash all of these brushes with the odorless paint thinner. Bob's brushes don't like soap and water. All you have to do is wash them in a little odorless thinner. We'll come down here and shake out the excess. And just beat the devil out of it. Make sure it's good and dry. Actually, we'll wipe that on a paper towel just to make sure I have as much thinner out of that brush as I can possibly remove. All right, let's start down here in the lower portion. And I'm going to work from the light back into the dark just to soften and blend the sky a bit. Remove any offensive looking brush strokes, anything we don't like. And then down in the water, I'm going to use a level stroke. Brush all the way across. As you brush across, you will pick up just a touch of that sort of bluish green watercolor. And it will drift across that little open area, so there will be some color in there. It won't be completely void of color. We want a little hint of it in there anyway. There, something like that. Put that brush down, give it a rest. Let's pick up a fan brush and see if we can come up with some happy little clouds that live in our sky. Actually, just to be safe, let's touch a little drop of liquid white, and we'll add that to our titanium white. That way we know our clouds will stick very well. I just don't want to get it too thin. Every time you add a little touch of that liquid white, it softens your color and you lose a little bit of blending ability. So I want to use as little as possible. I'm also getting just a little flavoring of bright red, which will hopefully make our clouds appear just a little brighter. So let's come up to the sky and think about using just the corner of the brush. Let's think about some happy little cloud shapes that live up here. Just making tiny little circles. I just kind of jam that corner of the brush into the canvas and start spinning it around. And all I'm really concerned with right now is that outside or silhouette shape, that top shape. I'm going to come up with something that looks natural, looks like a big fluffy happy cloud. Then I'll come back to my 2-inch brush. Just make sure it's good and dry. We'll knock off the excess one more time. I'll use the top corner of that brush to blend it. Blend away the bottom. Then very gently with 2 hairs and some air, or even less. Maybe that's 1.5 hairs and some air. We'll fluff it up and float across. And then we can go cloud crazy. We'll put several up here today. We'll put several in and have a good time. A little more of that same white with that little touch of bright red in it. Just makes those clouds extra bright. There lives another. Maybe we've got one over on this side. There's no wrong place to paint a cloud in your sky. It's entirely up to you. There's no wrong amount either. You can have a lot of clouds, you can have just a few, you can have none at all. That's the wonderful part about painting. It's such an individual thing. But you have all that responsibility, all that power. You get to make things the way you want them to be. We all need a little more of that. Ability to make those decisions and make the world the way you want it to be. Sweep that up, fluff it up, brush across. I'll let that one kind of drift off into the wild blue yonder up there. Maybe there are a few little stringy clouds hanging around in the sky today with these big fluffy numbers. How about just a few little things like this? That's always kind of nice. Just loading up with a little more of that white. I'm working the brush more on edge now. These are just some, I think Bob calls those little floaters. These are just little floaters. That's kind of nice. Sometimes if your brush picks up a little blue, you can bring it over here and have some shadowy versions of those little clouds. The little thin clouds are easy to blend. They don't require quite as much attention. All you have to do to those is just graze across, kind of follow the general direction that you laid them in. Graze over them. Let's have one more little fluffer. Just spin that brush around. Maybe this one comes up and overlaps that one, so it feels a little farther away. Just have to push them around, make them go where you want them to go. There we go. See, on the bottom, I'm not really concerned with what happens at all. You can do anything down there so long as the top's nice and fluffy and sort of shaped like a cloud. Good to have a little cloud practice. One more little set of stringy ones. I really like those. They're fun to paint. They're not too difficult, so. All right. All right. We don't want to be accused of having our head in the clouds for too long, so let's move on. Maybe build a little mountain back here. So let's take a palette knife. I've got some white spread out here that's got a little touch of blue in it already. I'm gonna put another little touch of blue in there. I'm gonna take some phthalo blue with my knife and just add it to that, along with some alizarin crimson. Just looking, maybe a little Prussian too, why not? Just looking for a nice kind of a grayish lavender color, something like so. Wipe off my knife. That same fan brush, that'll work. That'll work. It's working for the clouds, so let's keep going with it. Let's load it with some of this lavender color. We can make a little, maybe we've got a little distant mountain. Lives way, way, way back here. So I'll just take the corner of the brush and drag it along. We'll create a little. Mountains are actually a lot like clouds when you're talking about a painting. All we're concerned about is that outside shape, and what happens down here we don't care too much about yet. We will in a minute, but not quite yet. All I'm worried about out here is just having a nice little mountainy contour, nice little silhouette. Put a little body under it, put a little filler down there. Then I'll take my 2-inch brush and we'll grab that paint and just pull it. Just grab it and pull it. And I'm just paying close attention to the angles that I've already sort of established in that mountain. I want all of these strokes to follow those angles. And I want that mountain to look like it's just sort of floating back in the distance. It's just hanging around back there. Matter of fact, if you want to make it look really far away, we could take a little soft blender brush. This is nice when you have a few layers of paint on the canvas and you want to just graze across something. You can kind of get in there and tickle it a little bit without disturbing the paint too much and messing up your outlines. That's even nice for the clouds if you want to wisp over the clouds with a nice soft little blender brush. Those are handy sometimes. All right. Since we kept that one far away, we can come close now. Let's come close and get big and bold, and we'll have an enormous mountain that lives here. Get the palette nice and clean, and we'll pick up some Prussian blue And midnight black, about equal parts of Prussian blue and midnight black. And then we'll add a little touch of Van Dyke brown and alizarin crimson. That will be our mountain mixture. Just get a nice dark mountain color. Spread it out nice and thin on the palette. Really get tough and mash it out. And we'll take our knife and just cut across. That puts a nice even roll of paint on the knife, on the long working edge of the knife like that. Okay, where's the big mountain live? Big decision time now. Let's say he lives right about there. Absolutely, why not? He's got another little peak that kind of hangs out right there, comes right on down. You can get tough on this and really push that paint into the fabric and then scrape all of that excess away. Another peak on that side. Maybe we got a little one over here. Maybe one more right there. That's a ginormous mountain. But I'm removing all of that excess paint. I know you can hear me scraping. It's kind of loud. But that's important. It's important to remove all that excess paint. It makes the next step so much easier if you have all of that buildup removed and off of your canvas. Go back to that old 2-inch brush I'm using. We'll plunk it down just below the outline of the mountain. I don't want to blow through there accidentally and mess up my nice clean shape. And just like we did with the mountain in the background, I'm going to grab this paint and pull it and follow all those angles. Come from this side, right in front. We'll bring that one down. And I'm kind of watching the brush strokes. I'm always studying those brush strokes to see what kind of a contour I can build into my mountain early. I'm beginning to plan where all the little ridge lines and cracks and crevices are. Where that big major peak splits. Maybe it comes way over here. And then maybe it comes back. The beauty of this is you're not committed to it at all right now. You can change your mind. I don't know that you can see those little brush strokes in my canvas, but when you paint, you'll be able to see them on yours, and they're very helpful. You can almost do a little sculpture with your paint before you ever apply any highlight. It's just a good way to kind of tell what sort of features your mountain has. Everyone's going to be individual and unique, and it's nice to plan it out that way. All right, let's take a little titanium white. Maybe we'll add teeny tiny, itty bitty little touch of bright red to that color too. Just mixing in a little bright red with my titanium white. We'll try to make it a bit brighter. And then we'll mash that out very, very flat on the palette. And again, we're going to cut off that little roll of paint. Now let's head up for our peaks. I'm going to start with the peaks that I feel would be in the background first, and then we'll work our way forward. So let's try maybe this one here. Very, very gently, just touch your knife to the canvas and let that paint just sort of float right off. You're going to float down the mountain and allow the canvas to take what it wants, and it will leave you with what's left. There we go. Got to get some on this big peak here. There it goes. Maybe that comes on across there and down. Just let this stuff wander around wherever you want it to go. And there's just a little bit on that one. And then maybe this comes over. We'll kind of follow some of those brush strokes I was talking about. Got a little sense of where I want all these little contours to live. That's the lightest touch imaginable, though. One of the instructors used to say, pretend you're trying to paint the wings of a butterfly without knocking it out of the air. I always thought that was a great analogy for how gently you should touch this. Just enough to get that paint to come off. All right. Let's take a little white, a little touch of phthalo blue. We can even add just a little tiny flavoring of phthalo green in there if you want. Not much though. You can get in trouble with phthalo green, so be careful with it. Be careful with it. Let's cut off a little roll of that color. And we'll come back into the background now. Add a little shadowed snow on the far side of the mountain. And you have to decide what's in front and what's behind. So maybe this little peak kind of lives in front of that one, and we just push it into the background back there. If you get into tight spots, you might even want to load the small edge of your knife like that. You can fit that into smaller areas. And just add the shadow or the highlight, whichever side of the mountain you're working on. You can add that in little bites and have a little more control over it. So that's kind of nice. A little more of that color, and we'll just cut this one off. Maybe that one is behind that one. One reason I love painting mountains. They're all going to turn out just a little different. Everyone's going to look a little different. No matter how many times you paint a mountain, it's hard to get any two of them to come out exactly alike, but who would want that, right? They should all be individuals. Let's play around with this ridge line just a little bit. I feel like maybe this could kind of wander on over there. I kind of started that off without a real plan of where it was going, but I think that'll work. Just wanted to emphasize the fact that you could do that. You could change your mind and direct your mountain in a different way. If you add something like that, though, it's important to come back. It's important to come back and give it its own little private shadow. So we'll do that. Make a little more of that shadow color. The blue, I think I added a little Prussian blue this time just to make it a touch darker, a little bolder, more out in the front. We'll give this one a little shadow right there. I think I'm even going to add a little touch of my mountain base mixture and just kind of gray it down so this feels like it's a little closer to us. There we go. Yeah, that's what I want right there, right there. Just feels like it came out and wrapped around, and it's suddenly a lot closer to us. We can even play a few games with the face of the mountain. If you have a little area like this, sometimes it's fun to just throw in a random little shadow like that, and it makes that piece project and stand up a little farther. Maybe this stands up and projects off the slope the original slope of the mountain. And you can go and go and go and go on mountains and just have a big time with them. But we better stop right there if we want to have anything else in this painting. I could go all day on a mountain, so we'll bring it to a close and put a little mist at the base here. I'm just tapping with the 2-inch brush. It's always helpful if you make a noise or two. Sweep that up, put a little mist at the base. And I'm following the angles as I tap. I'm not just coming through here and tapping at random. You don't want to come through and like slice it off. Trying to feel like my brush is almost trying to walk up the slope of that mountain and back down. Make it conform with those angles. And then you come back and very, very gently sweep just a couple hairs and some air. Delicate, delicate little operation there. Okay, I said I was done, but I'm not. I see one more thing. And then I promise we'll move on. If you'll humor me. Just one more step. We'll try to make this worth it. I love taking a little misty area like that and then just kind of pulling one piece of that slope out and in front. It adds a lot of distance, and it's kind of a freebie. Sort of makes this feel farther away, and it makes this feel closer. I just think that's such a neat little thing that you can do, and it only takes a second. Adds a lot of depth really quickly. Makes it a little more interesting. All right, we'll say that's good. If we're going to have some water down here, it's just fairly possible that we might see that mountain in the water, a little reflection of that mountain. So if you want to do that, you take some of that mountain base color, and I'm gonna knock it down with some of that lavender I made for my original distant mountain way, way, way back there. And let's say we don't have to be super duper careful here, but I'm just gonna kind of roughly mirror that shape down in the water. Whew. Messed up now, huh? We'll see. Maybe we can make something out of this after all. Just a little bit of that color down in the water. Let me take my 2-inch brush. Actually, let me wipe this off a little bit. Let's pull this from the bottom up. I'm going to set my palette down for just a second so I can have a paper towel in my hand. Because in between strokes, you're going to pick up some paint, and I want to wipe that off. I want to wipe that paint off as I do this. So I'm going to pull from the bottom up. Bottom up. Just don't want to transfer a bunch of that dark mountain color down to the bottom. Just wipe it off in between, bottom up, all the way across. Then we can go from the top down. Just a little hint of that shape in the water. Then we can brush across. Gentle, gentle, gentle. At least until you see what the paint's doing. If it's not moving around enough and you need to push it around a little more, that's fine. But always start with a light touch until you see what the paint's doing. If you want to see a little touch of the snow in the reflection, we can take a little white. And again, I don't have to be super duper accurate, but I can just put a little hint of that highlight over here. There's A little dab on that. Maybe we see a little touch there. Not super concerned about it. Just want to get it close. Don't know that we'd see much of the reflected light, but we'll drop a little in just in case. Now, once more, and I'm going to grab a completely clean and dry 2-inch brush for this. And this will be just 2 hairs and some air. Graze over that. Boy, this is some still water. We can see the reflection in there that clearly. And then brush across. Just enough to kind of disturb it a little bit. So then we've got a little hint of that mountain showing up in our water. All right, we need some foothills. So let's just start with that mountain color. That's a good base, and I've got some leftover lavender I'll throw in. If you don't have any of that leftover lavender, you can always just pick up some titanium white, add it to your mixture, that's fine. And then we'll throw in a little sap green, a little touch of Van Dyke brown. Dull it down and begin to turn it more of a green color. Kind of a gray green is what I'm after. A blue-gray green. We'll grab a little 1-inch brush. Load it up with some of that color. All right, let's go back here and find a few little foothills that live back here. Just kind of wind in from the side. Cut down in front of that little misty area. And we'll fill it in just a bit too. I want to add a little bit more color just below. Then I'll go back, grab a 2-inch brush. This is my fairly clean and dry 2-inch brush. It's not completely clean, but it's the one I was using for my reflection there. Clean enough to do what we want to do. And we'll just tap the base of that and make it disappear. Into the mist. Can even do a little crisscrossing stroke there at the base to make sure that's nice and soft and totally blended away. A lot of times it's nice to come back with your little 1-inch brush. We can play around with these foothills just a bit and do some fun things with them. You can even take your brush here and come way back along the ridge, along the top, and just pop that paint up with tiny little strokes, tiny little 1/4-inch strokes. Just barely touching. Makes it look like thousands upon thousands of little trees lining those hills. And even down and within the foothills, sometimes that will show up. If you want to layer your foothills just a little bit, this is always fun. Take some of that same color or even add just a touch more dark. Maybe one of these just sort of projects in front of the previous row there and comes on down. Maybe this one does the same. Maybe it kind of catches this curve and comes down here and over. So we get a little extra layering in there. That's always fun. Maybe I've got room. Let's add one more. Let's soften this down. Maybe we'll have one more in front of that one. A little softening back here. Pop up some little treetops on these. Okay. Yeah, let's do one more. Let's do one more right there. Felt sort of empty. Felt like I just had a little hole in my painting. It needed some meaning there. Found meaning in the foothill. There it is. I'll soften that one up too. Plant some little trees on that one. We're just about to a point here where we'd be coming in contact with the water. So let's take, well, we have some of that foothill color going. Let's go ahead and add a little in the water. So we'd see a little reflection of these two, I feel. Right on back, right on back, right on back. Take our 2-inch brush and soften those downward strokes just a bit. Then brush gently across, just like we did the mountain reflection, same way. All right. Go back to the old trusted palette knife here. Clean that off a bit. Let's take some white, little dark sienna, a little touch of the liquid white. I'll flatten that out against the palette. Cut off a very fine little roll of paint. I don't even know if you can see that. It's a very small roll of paint. And we'll add a little shoreline just at the base of those little foothills. Now I'm paying real close attention to that long edge of my knife. I want to make sure this stays relatively level, relatively straight. I don't want to get real dipped to one side or the other. I want my water to appear to sit very level back here. So trying to maintain some semblance of level ground as it meets the water line. All right, let's get darker. Let's get darker. Let's get darker. Let's take a little Prussian blue and black and brown and crimson, kind of making up that mountain color again. But I'm gonna add some sap green to that and get a really dark color for some trees and bushes and all sorts of good stuff. Lives down here on the edge of the lake. And probably on this side of the lake too. I imagine we'll have some stuff on both sides. Let's see, let's go with that little 1-inch brush. It's working pretty well. I'm just gonna pull that through that dark color, standing the handle up and down and pulling it through the paint one direction. And one direction only. That rounds one corner of the brush. It rounded this corner. Now I'm going to turn that corner up, and we'll bring it up to the canvas and just plant some little far away distant things back here. Little deciduous trees and shrubs and whatever. Covering up part of my work there, but that's all right. We know it's there. We know how to do it now. These are growing up just a little taller on this side of the canvas, over on the right side of the canvas. Kind of want to give this the appearance that it's getting closer to us as we step to the right. So I'm trying to make things just a little bigger, just a little bolder, just a little darker. Maybe this even kind of tapers down right there into a little piece of land. There we go. It's right on the water's edge, so we'll need some reflection out of this too. Gently across there. I'm going to have some fun with a little tiny number 3 fan brush. Take some of that same dark color, load this brush to a nice chiseled edge, pull it through the paint, load both sides, nice and sharp. And we'll have some little treetops that poke up out of here. Just angle that brush to the side. I'll put a few little evergreens back here amongst all these leafy trees and bushes. Just taking that corner and bending it. All I'm interested in is just a little indication right now. We're not gonna have anything too major. These are just far away little distant things. Wouldn't see a whole lot of detail. It's funny with fan brushes. It seems like one corner seems to do a better job than the other corner. Always sort of favor one corner of my fan brushes. They tend to work a little better than the other. Isn't that funny? Can always tell when the favorite corner is touching the canvas. There we go. One more and I'll stop. Right there. These guys appear to be a little taller, so let's go ahead and beef up that reflection too. We'll kind of see a little indication of those down in the water. I wasn't done too carefully. I just kind of punched a little color down there because I know I'm going to come back and diffuse it anyway. There we go. All right. This is probably close enough that we could take a little Van Dyke brown. Maybe drop in a little wedge of land. This would show up a little more detailed and a little more apparent than that little shoreline that lives way, way, way back at the edge of those other foothills. This one's going to project out, have a little width to it, have some soil there. Take a little white and sienna, Van Dyke brown, mix it all together just to a very marbled appearance. Let's graze over this gently, just like we put our snow up on the mountain. Same way. Just barely touch it, barely touch it. We'll put a little highlight on there. And that little deal needs a water line, a little water ripple. So we'll take some liquid white, titanium white, mash it out nice and flat, cut off a little roll of paint. And we'll just rub a little water line right underneath that little shore. There'd be water lapping up against that land, I'm sure. You'd see a little disturbance, a little surface tension on your water. The big thing that does is give you a little a little light separation between those two dark colors. Cut a few little trunk indications into my trees. Maybe scratch in a little stick and a twig back here in the... Might see a few things showing up there. You never know. You never know. Can't hurt. Can't hurt to put them in there. Let's take a little touch of liquid white. Just on that same dirty 1-inch brush, I'm going to go right into some cad yellow and Indian yellow and load that brush once more to a very rounded edge. We'll put just a little touch of highlight on some of these. Just so we got some separation. Maybe a little yellow ochre. I'll kind of change the flavor every time I do it. Add a little more of one yellow, a little less of another. Probably hit a little bright red before it's over with. Just be sure you save a little dark in between here and there. You can turn the brush over on its side and make some interesting little things. Tinier little bushes or grass or whatever we want it to be. Yeah, let's take a little bright red. Change that color just slightly. Tone it down, tone it down. Very important here is the idea that we're saving some of these darks. We don't want to cover up all those little dark pockets. Those are important. There we go. Before I abandon that color, maybe we just, here and there, we'll see a little bit of that highlight color in the reflection too. Why not? Why not? If this is still water, we'd probably see just a little touch of that. Probably should have done that before I put my water line in, but it's all right. We can make it work. We can make it work. Because we don't make mistakes, do we? All right, let's do something up here in the corner. We got a big empty corner. We need to show it some love. So I like this spruce tree idea. Let's keep going with that. Let's grab a big fan brush and load it full of that color. That real nice dark color. Maybe even just a little teeny tiny itty bitty drop of paint thinner goes in there with it. And we'll plant a big tree that lives right there. Does now. It sure does now. I think I've got the good corner of this fan brush going. It's more important up there at the top where you have to make those little branches. Once you get down in the body of the tree, you can just kind of jam it in there and keep going. Yeah, that's a nice big healthy tree. Be so healthy I had to reload my brush. A lot of branches on that one. Let's make, just for safety's sake, let's go ahead and make a little more of that dark color. I'm going to use it. I know I'm going to use it, so might as well mix up another batch of it. It's blue and black and brown and crimson and sap green, and I'm even going to put a little phthalo green in this batch. Make it a little stronger. There we go. Now we got plenty. Now we've got plenty for some big trees. Let's keep going. Let's keep going and give him some friends. Have another one there. Over here, it doesn't really matter. We're just going to fill all that up with dark. We'll separate it later with highlights, and that's fine. Maybe one just kind of pokes up right between those little peaks. That'd be a good spot for it. When I paint these little evergreens, something I really pay attention to is filling up the center of the tree with plenty of dark color. So once I get that little top in there and I'm satisfied with the way it looks, I'll start to work down, and this is the little thing I say to myself in my head to make sure I'm filling up the tree and making it look natural, is I'll poke a few touches in the center, and then I kind of walk down the steps to the left. I come back to the middle, 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 and I walk down the steps to the right. Middle, 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 walk down the steps. Middle, 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 walk down the steps. So if you ever had any difficulty painting these trees along with Bob, that's a good little breakdown to have in your mind. I know he's going so fast on the show. Sometimes when you're making a little presentation, you have to move along, but that's essentially what's happening there. Let's have one more. Right there. That looks like another good spot for one. When you're just kind of bebopping along with no plan, sometimes things work out a little better. Your painting will just sort of talk to you, tell you where it wants a little tree to live, or a little stick, or a twig, or a mountain, or a cloud, whatever it is. Sharpen up those tops just a little bit. We'll even fake a couple of treetops in there. Just take our knife and kind of plow it through the paint. Make a couple of little phantom treetops live back there. Let's take some more of that. This was shoreline color, I believe, is what we used it for. It's 2 browns and a little white. I'm going to use this for some tree trunks too, little tree trunk indications, just here and there. Touch a little bit in the center of those trees. And let's grab, I've got a fan brush here. It's full of that mountain color that I used in the background. So let me wash this off. And let's take a little touch of liquid white. What should we use? Maybe cad yellow, yellow ochre, and I want to add some phthalo green because that makes such a bright, pretty evergreen green. Just looks so appropriate to me on pine trees. So I'm going to add a lot of that phthalo green to that. Let's come up here and highlight just a few little touches. Number 1 here, your number 1 task is to avoid covering all of that dark. You've got to have the dark to show the light. That's the little rule that never goes away. Always follow that little rule, just the same as you would that a thin paint sticks to a thick paint. And we're observing that one also. Take just a little brighter touch, and I'm going to bounce right through the center of a few of these trees. Light up the very center. That puts a lot of light on the branches that are just sort of reaching out directly towards you. Should make your tree just a little more dimensional, a little rounder. All right. Now let's get crazy. Let's take that big brush and fill it full of that dark color. Pull it in one direction and one direction only. It will have a nice little round corner, just like that little 1-inch brush. And I'm going to park some bushes down here in the corner. I'm going to try not to cover up all that little mountain reflection I worked so hard on. Yeah, we've got a little touch of it showing. That's cool. Just wanted it to peek through so we get a sense that it's in the mountains reflected in the water. Kind of neat to see that. Down here, you can just fill this up any old way, long as it's dark. long as it's dark, that's all that matters. All right. Let's grab a little 1-inch brush and dip it in the liquid white first. Then we'll pull it through some of these nice light yellow colors. Let's pick up a little Indian yellow and cad yellow maybe to begin with. Just looking for a lot of texture to sort of appear on my palette. That tells me I have the brush loaded nice and full and it's primed and ready. So we can come up here and touch very, very gently. Just kind of work our way around and create some little bushes and foliage back here. I'm going to get some of that phthalo green in there. I like that too much not to utilize it. Yeah, that makes such a pretty green. I love that. It's a refreshing green. Is that a good word to describe that? It's the best one I can think of. It's a refreshing green. Just as with the trees, I want to be very careful not to cover all that dark. Whew, it's important. That dark is important. I can't say that enough. Maybe sometimes it's fun to take a little brown, a little touch of Van Dyke brown. Maybe there's a little exposed soil down here. Just kind of, we can see a little open spot right there. It's kind of a dry patch. Things don't grow very well there or something. I'll take a little bit of my brown and white sienna. Just put a little texture on that. And we can come back and close it up just a bit and have some of these little bushes kind of grow down and on top of all of that stuff. Just sort of surround it. That's always kind of neat. Haven't used any bright red on my highlights yet. I like to do that, so we'll pull a little bright red in there. Just alter that color a bit. Yeah. I'll touch more liquid white. Had some laying there on my palette. A little spare liquid white. It's nice to have spare liquid white laying around. Use it when you need it. There we go. Let's take a knife, and in these dark areas, we'll scratch in a little stick and a twig. Little structure to all these bushes and trees and etc. Yeah. I'd say with that, we can call that little painting finished. Let's grab a liner brush, a little bright red. We'll put a signature on this one. And as I do this, let me thank you for joining me again. I hope you enjoyed this painting. I hope you'll give it a try. And until the next time, happy painting. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this little mountain scene. And if you're painting along with me, be sure and post your results to social media with the hashtag #PaintLikeBobRoss. And as always, subscribe for more Bob Ross related content.